I'm Mike Uyak. I love to try new things, and I've had culinary adventures all around the world, as well as right at home. I've had really wonderful food, as well as some really horrible food. I'd like to share some of my adventures with you, and we'll see if I have what it takes to fix whatever goes wrong. This is Recipe Redemption. Hi, and welcome to this edition of Recipe Redemption. Today we look back to an ad campaign by Chef Boyardee circa 1973 for their pizza kits, which are still available for purchase today and are still somewhat popular despite the ready availability of really good takeout pizza, as well as ready-made bake-at-home pizzas and even focaccia-like flatbreads that bill themselves as basically pizza, some assembly required. The kit itself doesn't really require redeeming. You're either going to buy the kit or not, and you get what you get. There's a dry mix, which you add water to make a dough that creates a sort of a cracker crust. It doesn't really rise. A can or packet of somewhat watery tomato sauce with some herbs thrown in, and powdered shelf-stable cheese to sprinkle on top. If you like a cracker crust, it isn't horrible. But to me, a pizza really requires the yeastiness of actual leavened bread dough with a good chew from developed gluten. What takes this somewhat mediocre but generally edible pizza kit and really herds it straight down the primrose path is their suggestion for how to make the pizzas international. See, this plain sort of cheese pizza is kind of boring. And even with the addition of pepperoni, might get kind of old after a while. Americans really weren't that savvy about international cuisines back in the 70s, when even Italian restaurants were considered exotic in many parts of the country, and not a sushi joint could be found. So it's no surprise that somebody's idea for making pizza international missed the mark, because they simply threw a few stereotypical ingredients they associated with ethnic cuisines on top of a straight cheese pizza, and ta-da! I'm going to let you take a close look at some of their suggestions. Go ahead, hit pause on the video, because I want you to read some of these. That's just great. Chinese pizza. And arguably Italian pizza becomes German pizza if you throw sausage and sauerkraut on it. Corned beef and cabbage turn it into an Irish pizza, even though corned beef and cabbage isn't even all that popular in Ireland. I want to take a deep dive on four of these because they are, to me, the most egregious. The Chinese pizza, which, as a reminder, has snow peas, shrimp, bean sprouts, water chestnuts, chives, and of course a dash of soy sauce, because nothing says Chinese food like chop suey on flatbread. The Jamaican pizza I want to look at has bacon, green pepper, onion rings, and it doesn't really say, but I think it's not the deep fried. It's basically just pan fried rings of raw onion, sauteed onion. Kidney beans. I don't know what kidney beans are doing on a pizza, or what they have to do with Jamaica. And cooked sliced okra. That's the only arguably Jamaican thing on there. I want to look at the Indian pizza too, because they just threw some curry powder in the sauce with some chicken, green pepper, nuts, and raisins, and that's their idea of curry. And the Scandinavian pizza, which has sardines, raw onion, hard-boiled egg, and, if you like, caviar to make it fancy. Ye gods, these sound pretty horrible. I'm going to eat them. So first let's lay out some ground rules. We're not really trying to review the pizza kit itself. We know that it's, kind of a lowbrow version of pizza. We know this already. So, what we're really trying to examine are the toppings. So, I'm not actually going to use the Chef Boyardee kit. I found another kit that has basically pre-made, pre-baked pizza crusts. They actually come in little 6-inch personal pizzas, and then they have little packets of the sauce and some mozzarella, some shredded mozzarella, and it's actual mozzarella cheese. It's not some dry powder. Um, so I'm going to use those in every one of these pizzas, and we're just going to go with the topping recommendations that they have for these 4 pizzas: the Chinese pizza, the Jamaican pizza, the Indian pizza, and the Scandinavian pizza. Um, we're going to give these a shot, and I get the feeling that I'm not going to want to eat a whole lot of this stuff, so I think I'm actually going to go half and half on each of the pizzas. I'm going to go half, half Chinese, half Jamaican, and then another one is half Indian, half Scandinavian. That way, I don't have to actually eat this whole thing. I eat all of unless it's completely inedible. I don't believe in waste, so I eat all of these experiments regardless of whether I like it or not. If it's even reasonably edible, I eat the whole thing. So, to save myself from having to eat something potentially horrible, we're going to go half and half on these pizzas. So, let's get baking. Oh, I really wish you could smell the kitchen right now. I mean, you don't, but I do. So, where to start? I guess the one that offends me the most: the Chinese pizza. Chinese pizza. All right. It's not horrible. I've had shrimp on pizza before. Used to be kind of a thing for me back in the day. The peas are difficult to eat. Hush. They really don't want to um, be bitten in half. uh, the rest of the ingredients are sort of, they're just there. The soy sauce really doesn't add anything. The water chestnuts add a little bit of a crunch, but it's not enough to really do anything for you. It's not horrible, but if I were to just close my eyes, take a bite of that, Chinese is not the first thing that comes to mind. So, yeah, I'll eat it. It's reasonably inoffensive. Now, the Jamaican pizza. I want to make sure that I get some of these pinto beans in this bite, because that's inexplicable. Quite hot. Yeah, the beans are weird. Bacon's fine. The okra, I pan fried it. I tried to keep it as dry as possible. Basically, if you agitate okra in the presence of water, that's what kind of gets it to release that sort of slimy sap that's in the middle of the pods. So if you cook them dry, particularly if you deep fry them, then you don't get as much of that slime. But in this application, you still get a little. But the beans are weird. I'm not eating any more of that. Okay. Indian pizza. As a reminder, I used ham instead of chicken. You know, I don't know how Indian that really is. They also have curry powder on here, nuts and raisins. Sure. Yeah, I can smell the curry powder. And I can taste the curry powder. The nuts give it a weird texture. Um, you don't expect to have those little bits on your pizza. Flavor's not bad, but I like curry powder. So, I mean, I would even, if you really like curry powder, I would even try like a German currywurst pizza before I would do this. Not my thing. And the Scandinavian pizza. As a reminder, this has hard-boiled egg, some onion, a lot of stringy cheese, and sardines. And an optional addition, put a spoonful of lumpfish, caviar. I can't really afford the expensive stuff. Fishy pizza. Let's go for it. How do I attack this? Caviar is very salty. Sardines give it a very distinct oiliness. The egg really, it's more of a textural thing than anything else. The flavor kind of disappears under all of this. It's not horrible, but again, it's kind of a weird sort of smorgasbord on a pizza pie. I don't know if I'm a fan. I think we can do better. So, for the Chinese pizza, I think we should have, well, definitely some Chinese flavors, some Chinese ingredients. I'm thinking char siu, roast pork, some green onions, and some hoisin sauce. I think that'll be enough of an augmentation to the existing tomato sauce. And they'll keep the cheese to a minimum, because cheese isn't really a big thing in Chinese cuisine. So it's a small concession to the idea of this being an actual pizza. For the Jamaican pizza, I'm not using pinto beans, I'll tell you that much. I think I'm gonna go with a jerk chicken. It's sort of a standard thing whenever you think Jamaican cuisine, jerk chicken comes to mind. I think that some more tropical flavors. So I think if I pair this with sort of a mango salsa or chutney or something like that, probably salsa, maybe some avocado as well. Indian, that's where things could get interesting, because I'm thinking if we take the crust and go in a sort of garlic naan bread direction, use a good bit of melted butter or ghee and garlic on it, and then I think, especially if we're sort of constrained to actually use the kit's included tomato sauce, the pizza sauce, I think instead of just adding curry powder to it, if we went with a chicken tikka masala, that oftentimes has sort of a tomatoey component to it. So I think that'll actually match a little better. As for the Scandinavian pizza, I'm just not sure fish is the direction you really want to go. I know that's sort of the stereotypical thing when you think of Scandinavia is seafood because they've got 1,000 miles of coast, but I really don't think for a pizza that's the direction we want to go. I'm thinking Swedish meatballs. Uh, I think making traditional, or as traditional as I feel like doing, um, Swedish meatballs, lingonberry preserves. I think those work pretty well. Let's get cooking. First off, I need to marinate some chicken here. I just have a couple of hindquarters. And I've got them in two different bags because I've got two different types of chicken. On the left is the Jamaican jerk chicken. Marinade for that consists of green onions, garlic, ginger, habanero peppers, lime juice, some brown sugar, some thyme, allspice, cinnamon, and nutmeg, and some black pepper. On the right is the marinade for the chicken tikka masala, which I made by combining yogurt, garlic, ginger, garam masala, turmeric, cumin, and some chili powder and salt. After marinating overnight, I threw them in a 350-degree oven for about an hour until they looked like this, at which point I let them cool, then used a couple forks to shred the meat and put them aside. In the meantime, it's time to make some Swedish meatballs. This is just some plain breadcrumbs soaking in cream for about 10 minutes, which I'm adding to about half and half mixture of ground pork and ground beef. To that I added salt, allspice, garlic powder, onion powder, mixed it all well together and rolled them out into these balls, which I then pan fried. Now typically you only cook these until they're just browned. I cook them a little bit more well done because I don't intend for this to actually sit in the gravy for hours. And speaking of gravy, once I evacuated the meatballs off to the side, I added a little more butter, then some flour to create a roux, and then some beef stock, and stirred that to combine. Just waited until it thickened before adding the halved, well, sort of mushed meatballs back into it and let it simmer for a little bit. And then it was time to assemble my pizzas. Here's the Chinese pizza with char siu pork, green onions, and hoisin sauce. Next to it is the Jamaican jerk chicken pizza, to which I'm going to add the salsa after it's done baking. Then we have the Swedish meatball pizza, which looks a little gross right now, but it's going to be good once I add the lingonberry jam at the end. And finally, the Indian pizza with chicken tikka masala, garlic, butter, and I added paneer cheese on top of that. And after baking, here's how they look. I'm really full. So the redemption pizzas I served for dinner, and I'll save you from having to watch me eat yet four more pizzas. But let's recap. The Chinese pizza. Char siu pork, smattering of green onions, hoisin sauce, and just the barest sprinkle of cheese just to sort of stick it all down. Quite good, as expected. Char siu is sweet. It's good and tender pork. It has a sort of a very subtle sweetness to it from its marinade. It's quite delicious, and that's just compounded by the sweetness and saltiness of the hoisin sauce. Really delicious. The jerk chicken. I've never made jerk chicken before, so I didn't know what to expect. It came out a lot subtler than I expected, especially for throwing those two habaneros in. I thought it was going to be fiery, but it really wasn't. The chicken actually sort of disappeared in flavor wise underneath the underneath the mango salsa that was on it, but it was also quite tasty. Um, rather the chicken tikka masala. I think I should have probably done something like sauteed the garlic ahead of time. It didn't quite, even in the 10 minutes that it was in a 450-degree oven, it didn't quite cook all the way through. So it still had kind of a very raw garlic flavor, but the butter definitely took the crust in that non sort of direction. The tikka masala was quite good, quite tangy. And then as for the Swedish meatball pizza, um, I could probably do better. If I had actually stewed the meatballs in that gravy all day and added cream and all that stuff, probably would have been better. But it was pretty tasty, and the addition of the preserves was really quite good. That lingonberry jam, gives it a little bit of sweetness to sort of cut the richness of that gravy and all the meat. So, whew, it's a lot of food. I'm going to need to sleep this one off, but I think that's. I think I acquitted myself well. But please let me know what you think in the comments below. So, we have tried some pizzas. I think the bottom line that we've learned here is not to trust advertisers just because a recipe or a food idea is in print in a magazine. Doesn't mean that it's good. I see a lot of, particularly like cooking magazines. Won't name any names, but you get these sort of food periodicals, and they come loaded with all of these recipes, and some of them are for tried and true classics, and some of them are for really innovative dishes, and some of them are somewhere in between. Not all of them are winners. Just because somebody wrote a recipe doesn't mean they know what they're doing, and individual taste may vary. So just because someone says this is a brilliant recipe doesn't mean that you personally are going to like it. So I didn't like any of these. Not really. They're edible, but they're not exactly something I'm lining up for. But to each his own. You cook to your taste. And I think that's the bottom line on this. So, tell me what you think. Please comment below. And if there's any other weird pizza toppings that you can think of that you'd like for me to try, let me know and I'll give them a try. Once this settles, because I have eaten a lot. So until next time, I'm going to get some Tums. And I'll see you right here, same bat channel, here on Recipe Redemption. Thanks for watching.